We are constantly on a roller coaster ride with our temperatures now that we're coming out of winter and getting closer to spring. We're about 1 week away from spring. And a lot of you are concerned about this roller coaster up and down temperature and how soon we can do things like change over to liquid feeding versus fondant or candy boards, how soon we can make our splits. So it depends on where you live in the US. I realize that some of you way far south are already into spring, but most of the US is still on that borderline, pretty risky. And so today I want to clarify it. Hi everybody, David Burns, good to be with you today. Thanks for watching my video. Going to be a video today to help you guys figure out, kind of wrap your mind around this concept of how do I go from either feeding hard candy to liquid feeding, or should I even begin feeding liquid? And what about pollen patties and pollen powder as well? Well, it's great to have you with me. And so let's jump right into it today. Let's talk about the when we go from feeding hard candy to liquid feeding. That's really the subject of today. And simply put, the best time to think about this as far as when you make this shift is when your bees are flying. If your bees are flying, that means that they're able to fly out and get nectar. And so that's a good indication that you're okay to feed them liquid if they're flying. And so they are sending out foragers. Reasons why you want to feed liquid is because one-to-one sugar water is what we're talking about today. And I add things like Honeybee Healthy Amino Bee Booster, and I add a pollen substitute powder. And I'll leave a link in the description for that. I add those three ingredients, about a teaspoon of each of those per 1 quart of one-to-one sugar water. That'll save all of you from leaving comments about how do I mix it up? You didn't tell us. So let me say it again. 1 teaspoon of Honeybee Healthy, 1 teaspoon of Amino Bee Booster, 1 teaspoon of pollen substitute protein powder, and I add that to one-to-one sugar water for 1 quart. 1-to-1 is about half filled with sugar, the other half is water. Wow, I explained it so easily. No more guessing at all. So the benefits of feeding them are just outstanding right now. So I'm already starting to feed most of my hives 1-to-1 sugar water. Now, this presents a lot of other questions that I intend to answer right now, and that is, a lot of you are wondering, I'm afraid to put that on there because what if it turns cold again? Here's the deal. Bees don't really consume a lot of liquid sugar water that we give them if the temperature drops below 50 degrees. I don't know if they just don't like drinking cold water. I know I enjoy cold water in the summertime, but not so much in the wintertime. So for some reason, the warmer the water is, the more the bees will consume it, is my observation. And so that's an indication that it's best to feed sugar water in temperatures above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And so consider that. Now, the other question that a lot of you ask me is, what if it dips down below freezing at night? Should I pull them off? It depends on how far it goes below freezing. For example, I've got a temperature coming up on Sunday night of 30 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 degrees below freezing. I'm not going to pull my jars off because there's enough heat coming through my Burns feeder board to keep that jar from freezing. Now, when you add sugar, it has to be colder than 32 to actually freeze. And if it's not filled to the top, even if it does freeze, it probably won't crack because it has room to expand. But certainly if you're dropping way below freezing into the low 20s or teens, get the sugar water off. It may bust your jars. Go back to feeding the winter bee kind. Now, a lot of you ask me, how can I figure this out? How do you know what the future holds? I simply take my phone out. I have several applications, apps for my weather forecasts, and I'll look at several of them. And I will determine what my low temperatures are going to be. And the other thing is, if it cools off at night, and yet it warms up nicely in the daytime, it's fine to go back out there. As soon as it warms up good, put the jars on there. It helps so much to get those bees going. I can't tell you the benefit that you're going to receive by giving your bees a head start. They're coming out of winter pretty hungry, actually. Even if they have food on board, remember, they still may cluster when it drops below 50 degrees. And that way you're feeding from the top with one of my feeder boards, hopefully. And those feeder boards there's a screen in there so the bees can push their proboscis up through the screen into the jars and start eating. Even though they're clustered, the top of the cluster is feeding. There's a lot of brood that the queen is laying right now and the bees are caring for, and that sugar water is going to be huge to get your bees up and roaring really good. So now another deal with the cold snap is, I know you're going to ask this, so let me answer it. A lot of you wonder, should I take my wraps off? If you wrapped your hive up and it's warming up, cooling off, getting cold, getting warm, roller coaster temps, can I just go ahead and take my wraps off? Well, I don't wrap any of my hives all winter long, and we had a few days where it dipped below 30 degrees Fahrenheit wind chill factor. So bees are quite capable of staying warm if they're healthy and if they're well populated. They can take care of themselves. And so you're probably out of the woods unless you're just living real far up north and the wrap is the only thing saving your tiny little hive. By all means, don't unwrap it until you get some nicer days. It's just going to be one of those things that you can't really apply a recipe. You can't apply cookbook science. You can't apply a certain date. You go by temperatures rather than the calendar. You go by the real events happening right now rather than the calendar. And that's important. I think a lot of beekeepers want to run by the calendar, and you can't do that because the seasons are so different. Anywhere from, I mean, my season can be different from a week to 2 weeks every single year. And so I have to go by what's happening out there. When do I stop feeding? That's another good question that you ask me. I stop feeding when I have a robust and abundant supply of dandelions on the ground. When they're blooming in full swing and they're everywhere, I'm not feeding my bees anymore because I don't need to. They're getting enough resources from nature. And remember, nature always provides a better diet than we can. What we give them is only like an IV to a sick patient. We're just trying to get our bees the food they need when it's not available. So as soon as it becomes available, stop feeding your bees. Now, if you're unaware of, I know I kind of, boom, here's the top feeder. But if you're unaware of the top feeder, this is the one that I invented many, many years ago. And I found a neat way to feed bees. And you'll see, as this shows you, it goes on the hive like this. And the jar lids are included when we ship them. You just simply take the tape off like that. And then you get to the lid. And let's talk about the lid a little bit, because some people have asked me about, if it gets too cold, will the sugar water drip out? That's a good question. And to answer that, what I did, I simply filled this jar up and I stuck it in my refrigerator. And I got it down to 34 degrees and it did not drip out. So then I poured half of it out so there would be more air in the back of it here, or the top of it. And then I watched it in the refrigerator too. I had it sitting extended above a catch plate, and no sugar water dripped out at 34 at half full. So I know some people are saying that if it gets cold, the sugar water would drip out more. That's not been the case for me. Now I add ingredients and that may be contributing to it not dripping out as much. Again, I add, ready for the recipe again? I add I add a teaspoon of Honeybee Healthy, a liquid, a teaspoon of Amino Bee Booster liquid, and 1 teaspoon of brewed powder or protein powder substitute. And the kind that I use, that's going to be another question, is I use Ultra B, and that's the powder that I use. It's made for bees. And so I mix all that together. That could be helping it to stay at cold temperatures and not drip out. The key to that, if you look at our lids, they have a rubber gasket, a rubber seal built into the lid. So if you just put it on like that, then the seal's broken, it's going to drip. So you got to get some muscle behind it. Make sure that rubber seal seals good. And then when you put it on, I usually shake it like that, and then you just drop it right on there. Remember, there's screen below here. Once you put these on, you put another box, an empty box, like a deep box here, and then you put your top cover to cover this all up and put a cinder block on top, as shown here in my video. And this is a great way that you could feed your bees, because it's going to be hot and cold and hot and cold. And when they get cold and cluster, they're going to be up toward the top. This is a perfect board to use to feed them from the top, because it's allowing the top of the cluster to gain access to both the protein, that's in the pollen powder, the substitute powder, and it also allows the bees to gain access to the sugar water, of course. And so you can use 2 of these if you want to. If that's too many, you can use 1. It also has a built-in slot. In the olden days, we used to push pollen patties through here. And the reason we don't use pollen patties anymore, is because of small hub beetle. I just don't like using pollen patties. That's my personal opinion, because if I put the pollen patties on there now, even though I push them through to where the bees are, it still gives a place for them to go and munch on that good protein and sugar too. So I'd rather put my protein in the liquid, and when the bees eat the liquid, it's just simulating what happens with nectar. Nectar that bees gather from nectaries of flowers actually has pollen grains in it that bees consume the protein while they're drinking the sugar water. Voila, that's what they do when we add the protein here in the form of a powder. It's just a little bit, but it does give the bees what they need. I know a lot of you, we had like a couple hours where this ran out of stock, and the only reason it ran out of stock is because the inventory level control, they told me this. I don't control the website. I'm not a part of the website, but they told me that they set it so high and you bought so many that we dropped below the inventory level. And so they corrected that and upped the inventory. We have a great way now that we're able to keep these manufactured for you guys. So we shouldn't run out of these. We've always ran out in past years. That's over. I dare you to try to buy enough of these where we run out again. If we do run out, it's just software glitch where we didn't keep our inventory numbers high enough. So check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can get a top feeder. And again, it works great. You want to feed bees from the top, because that cluster is up there on colder nights, they can still eat. I hope I've answered. I think it was pretty thorough what I answered today. I want to let you know I've got a live stream coming up tonight if you're watching this when it's published. Thursday night, this live stream tonight is going to be all about different types of splits in the spring. So if you're wondering about how to split your bees this spring, well, you gotta join me on live stream. You can ask questions. We've got some giveaways planned. Also, let me tell you about the book that Sherry and I wrote. We did not self-publish this. We were approached by a publishing company that wanted us to write a book on beekeeping. And so we did, and Sherry and I wrote this book together. She wrote half and I wrote half. Backyard beekeeping, everything you need to know to get started with your first hive. And it's a very thorough book. If you're wondering if you want to keep bees, if you're still undecided about it, this is the kind of book you read to make that decision. And so we go into not as much detail as an advanced book, of course, but it's a book that you read to get enough information to make your decision if beekeeping is right for you. If you buy it off our website, Sherry and I both will autograph it for you. So take a look at that book. I'll leave a link in the description as well. And remember, we always have online classes which always go on sale the first day of spring. So March 19th through the 25th of 2024, we have some special unique offers with our online courses. If you buy our ultimate course, it's $100 off, and a 1-year subscription is included to the Bee Culture magazine. I write a column for Bee Culture every month. That's a great magazine, one I started with when I started beekeeping. And so when you buy the ultimate class, $100 off plus a 1-year subscription to Bee Culture. It's been around since 1873. Great magazine. Now the other classes will be 50% off. All the single courses that we offer are 50% off. The bundle is the better deal, but if you want to buy just a single class, you can. That starts again March 19th through the 25th, 2024. Now I have another great video in case you are just starting this year, or maybe you're thinking about it, but you're unsure. Right here, how to start beekeeping. I made the video several years ago. Nothing's new really about how to start. Check it out. I'll see you guys over there.